Hey Taylor,
What is up, Carl?
it's good to see you again.
It's great to see you. I was really hoping you were going to
The
just do the little the theme song there.
final countdown thing. I think we should add it in post, although we probably can't, can we? Because
I
copyright or whatever.
yeah, maybe if it's only so long. I think there are rules around that, right? Like if it's so long, maybe it's okay.
Fair use.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
So true story. Growing up in the '80s, at one point I was gifted a cassette player, which was high
Yeah,
tech back in the day,
right.
and my first audio cassette was Europe Final Countdown. So
Nice.
yeah, that song has a special place in my heart. That's what we were just talking about, was having that be our theme song. But yeah,
What are the
and Def
odds?
Leppard. Yeah, what are the odds? The '80s are great.
That's man, like that's pretty legit. The first time I heard I grew up in a pretty conservative household, and so the first time I heard a non-Christian music song that I was really allowed to listen to or whatever was like when I bought my first car and I could listen to what I wanted to on the radio. So
Nice.
aside from like, stuff that, guys were playing at football practice or whatever in the locker room and stuff, it was like, oh man, like so I like loaded up on like AC/DC and like all this like, old school rock kind of type stuff. And people were like, oh, it's so overplayed. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm hearing most of these for the first time. So
Oh man, well see, your parents gave you a great gift then. You were able to
yes.
experience all that.
Yes,
But
but I could really
that's
actually
okay.
truly appreciate it when I was much older. So I don't
Yeah.
get a lot of cultural references a lot of times or whatever, but like now I'm like, oh, this is a great song. And my wife's like, yeah, this is like super old. Like this is it's like, oh, okay.
I
Cool.
remember having friends like you growing up where, we had a Nintendo and
Friends
pretty much
like
did whatever we
you.
wanted. And I remember that some friends, they had one too. So you go over to play and their parents had it set up on this little tiny, like 12-inch black and white TV screen. And the only games they have are like the Christian games at the time, which is like some
Yep.
Noah's Ark thing. And some other, it's like, oh, you poor kids.
Yep. Yeah, you don't get any of the cool stuff. So sorry.
Oh
But
well.
yeah, now, yeah, my kids have a Switch, and my mom has been staying with us for a little bit. So, grandma's been staying over, and so the kids were teaching her how to play Mario Kart on the Switch, which was hilarious. Um, but yeah, so highly recommended if you get a chance to get the kids to try to teach your one of your older parents like how to play a video game. It's pretty fantastic.
Well, it's interesting you bring the Switch up because that has been on my mind. My kids, not intentionally, they're a little behind the scene or behind the times with video games because we just haven't really had the time to do them, honestly. And
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
got
yeah.
an N64 and I kept
Yes.
my NES and my SNES. I got those as well. So we play a little bit, but they're
What?
not blown away
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
by it. So I was thinking of the Switch, and I know they love Mario Kart because they played it at an arcade and loved it. So is
Mhm.
it a good experience on the Switch?
Yes, yeah, and the
Okay.
cool thing about the Switch is like, so we have this, I can't remember, like an old, they're like these packages or whatever or packs you can buy, so you can get all those old games too to
Nice.
play on your Switch. Very, very cool. We have the one where you can hook it up to the TV and stuff, obviously, and it pulls off the controller. So we play a lot of the sports games with the kids. So like that was the original reason we got it. Is our local library had a Switch, and the kids loved playing these sports games. And so it was great for like, hey, the weather's bad. And I don't want to just throw on the TV. Like, let's get them to, play tennis on the Switch or whatever kind of type
Sure.
thing, which is great until your 7-year-old daughter destroys you in these little games. Or I've never been able to beat my son in badminton on the thing. Like, it's ridiculous. And he's 4. Like, there's no strategy. He just walks up and starts
But
like waving like mad. And I'm like, I keep falling for some reason on the game. I don't know what I'm doing.
okay, last question, then we'll talk Shopify 'cause I know people are
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"What is this podcast?" But so is it like the Wii where you move the controllers, or is it like a traditional
So,
console where it's just the?
yeah, some games are like you can do that with some games where it's like movement
Oh,
based or whatever, but like there are
really?
others like on Mario Kart you can like actually like move the controls around to like turn and stuff, but you can just use like the joystick and stuff too.
Oh,
Either one works.
okay. Because I was trying to debate between the Wii because I think they like that tactile experience, the kinetic,
Hmm.
or the Switch. It sounds like it's the best of both worlds. All right,
I think the Switch is the best of both worlds personally, so
I'm gonna go
I
order
dig
one
it.
right now. Put
Let me
this on
send
the
you my
Liquid Weekly
affiliate
charge
link.
card. That's right. Cool. Dude, you got. Well, okay, I promised Shopify stuff. I'll ask you about that later. I was gonna ask about your race coming up, but we'll
Yeah, we
give
can end
us.
on that because
We'll end on that.
that's part of my pick of the week
Okay.
or
Oh, okay.
whatever. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So, what have you been working on this week in terms of Shopify work? Obviously, you've been busy. cranking stuff out over there in Taylor Page Studios. Um, what's been the haps this week?
Yeah, so this week it's just been a little bit more of the same. We had to do some movement around with the. I think we talked about this a little bit last week. The gift card, gift with purchase. So as far
Yeah.
as like fun, there's obviously other stuff that I've been working on. Finally, in the last final stages of getting a bundler actually launched, which was really cool. I'm really hoping for that to come out and stuff here in the next couple of weeks. That's really solid. I didn't have to do much work associated with that. I'm just like in the final stages of like we had an initial prototype kind of tested out. So that'll be the quick aside. And we're in the final stages basically where built this thing out, uses the Ajax like cart API and stuff to just like go and grab all these buttons. So we kind of like build this out, just like pushes this array of items or whatever into the cart, adds them all at once, and we're using some tagging and stuff or whatever to make sure it's done. And then that and combined, we have to apply a discount code with the URL. So then that's the annoying part. It has to redirect them back to the homepage. Because, and I don't know, I'll have to ask you about this at some other point too, or maybe this is a good time to talk about it. You used to be able to, with the discount code URLs, you know what I'm talking about, where you create a discount code and it's like, hey, you can promote it this way and you can apply it just directly. So that way, if they want to run it in ads and stuff like that, they're like, here's the link. It automatically applies it to a cookie, right, to the user session. And so we used to be able to like also add some parameters there where it would also then like return to a different place, right? So it would be like, go ahead and apply the discount code, but then like go to this page or whatever kind of type thing. And it used to be you could redirect them back to the cart or whatever. For whatever reason, like that functionality is gone now, or at least I'm doing something wrong or different or whatever, and I couldn't find anything in the docs about like what might have changed. So what I had to do instead was basically, so it hits the home page, but so instead of people being like, what the heck, what happened, it has a modal that pops up and it just says, hey, we just added these items to the cart, kind of type thing. And then like, do you want to go to the cart? Do you want to keep shopping? That was just, if I can't get it to redirect properly, here's the best case scenario kind of type thing. So anyways, did an initial deal with that. They didn't love the implementation because accounting wasn't super happy. We changed it because we were using discounts too much or whatever to get a set price. And then they weren't happy with how it was coming across in fulfillment. We did another way. We scrapped that, tried an app. Turns out the app was doing pretty much the same thing I was doing. And so we went back to how I was doing it originally and just tweaked a couple of things or whatever, where we're just basically discounting a couple of products with a buy one, get one promotion. And that seems to work out pretty good. So that's going to get pushed out this week. Like I said, that was kind of like in the final stages of back and forth approval. But same thing with the gift with purchase, doing the same thing with the discount URL. So long-winded way of saying, we were doing the same thing, but something either didn't get communicated between like the marketing team and like how we were doing this with development, because we launched this free gift with purchase where the discount code, part of the code to automatically add that item to the cart, it's looking for that discount code. Otherwise, every single time someone hits the threshold, it's just going to add this random item to the cart. And they're like, what the heck's happening here, right? So like I said, I don't know what happened, but people were like, all of a sudden the folks from fulfillment were like, hey, we're getting a bunch of requests and stuff like that or whatever that says like it's not properly adding the item to the cart. I was like, well, okay, like I tried it out on a bunch of different devices.
Works on my machine.
Yeah, like I don't know. And they said, well, we can't do it either, but like for some reason it's not working on their end.
Those are the worst bugs.
I know. And so I was just like, all right, well, we can put in this fallback where every single time someone hits this threshold in the cart, it totally circumvents the cookie. So it just says, hey, do you want a free gift? And then we'll do the same thing. We'll apply the discount code and it'll add the item to the cart. I was like, but this will show up for everybody, right? Once they hit this spend threshold. So is that what you want? And they said, yes. So that's just what we end up doing. So it's just one of those things where like, I tell people like, code's really dumb. Like code is amazing and awesome because of all the things it can do, but it only does what you tell it to do. So like if you don't account for all these random scenarios and people create all these random scenarios, it's not going to work how it's intended. So that was just the best pivot I could make or whatever. So now everybody that hits, $35 in their cart just sees this like free gift thing on their cart. So
I think
we'll see.
It's a really good thing you're able to do there, as a consultant, is to not just blindly try to implement what they want to implement, but be able to problem solve and come up with those alternative solutions that still get them roughly where they want to go, but maybe take into account some of the challenges you face on the technical side. So still be nice to know why
Yeah.
it wasn't working, but yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, that's always you're like, what can I get? Yeah.
Ah!
That's the tough part. It's like, okay, and part of that too, like training people
Yeah.
who are doing like customer support too, like ask these questions, like what device are you on? What browser are you using? Like,
Yeah.
anything to like help me debug this scenario, kind of type thing. So that part of that is that too, right? But I like how you frame that. Like, yeah, like you're able to ask those questions and really think through the whole process. So I like how you spun that in a way that made me sound. But it's true.
Smart.
Like a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough credit. Like that's what happens when you have to pivot like that, making sure
No.
people understand, okay, we can do this, but like this is going to be a potential scenario you have to consider there. And I don't think about that in the moment, especially when it's at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon where they're like, hey, we're having all these problems and I'm just trying to crank stuff out. My wife's like calling out like, hey, dinner's ready. And I'm like, I did it. I'm sorry.
Dude, you ate dinner at 4:30? Are you what?
No,
60?
she's like, it took me like that long to like communicate back and forth and get a job, the implementation down. It's like after 5. We usually eat like right at 5.
I actually used to eat dinner at 4:30 in college. I'd go to the cafeteria exactly at 4:30, which is when they opened, because you beat the line, because it tended to be a big line. And then 2, I'd be done by 5, back in my dorm room for an hour of The Simpsons, because this is back when you had to watch TV when it was on. There was no other alternative.
Yes. That's the worst. Like now everything's like DVR everything.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anyway.
no, 4:30 is the best time to go out to eat too, because like usually like, if you're out, there's hardly anybody there, so it's always easy to get a table.
If you ever want to have lunch with me, you're gonna hear me tell you we're gonna meet at 11:30, 11:45 at the latest. But like, why go at noon if you don't have to? It's just stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just next level thinking. Well, how about you, man? What have you been working on? Are you continuing like the migration stuff you were working on last week?
Yeah, so I'd say 2 interesting things to share this week. One is the migration piece. So we got this big store with over 250,000 orders over like 3 years that we're migrating from BigCommerce over to Shopify. And it's not live yet, right? But we needed to get the orders in place so they could finish the theme work. And then part of it too is there's some subscriptions involved, and a separate outside company is actually going to work to move those over. Thank goodness I didn't want to touch that if I didn't have to.
Yeah. Well, because I think when you said like BigCommerce doesn't really track all that, like, or it was separate, or what? I can't remember what you said. The difference there and how they deal with that.
It's a couple things with BigCommerce I've run into, and I'm no BigCommerce expert other than this work I've been doing. So someone feel free to correct us if I'm wrong. But from what I'm seeing, BigCommerce has sort of 2 ways of getting at the data. One is they have an API. Second one is they have some built-in export stuff. Using the built-in export stuff, you can get order information, but it does not include any like the tracking stuff. So if you also want to include that, you have to do a separate process to get that data and combine it. But it also does not include any of the payment method information, which is what you need if you're going to migrate subscriptions, because you have to be able to bring those over, right?
Right.
I think you can get that through the API, potentially. In this particular scenario, what ended up happening, the agency that's working, not the agency, the group that's working on migrating the subscriptions, they simply asked the legacy app on BigCommerce that's doing the subscriptions now, like, hey, is there a way to get this data? And they were kind enough to package it up for them and hand it over, which that's pretty rare, right? Because it's basically giving it over to a competitor. So that was a really nice move on their part, and appreciate that. I made the project a bit easier. So right now where I'm at with it is I've got all the orders up till the end of June in. And so while I'm waiting for them to go live with the store, I guess every month or so, I'll probably just go back, bring back over the current month's worth of orders and just keep doing that until our go live date, and then do one last final. I guess, it's a like a 3-step process, but I got some scripts and things, so it's not terrible. It's just a lot of manual work.
But it's, well, yeah, like especially because you've been working through all the errors and stuff of like, okay, like getting this done. So
that was the worst part.
Oof.
Doing 250,000 orders, I think I had a failure rate of about 3.5% that weren't being imported because of various reasons, right?
Right.
Which 3.5% is not bad, but that still is like,
it's still a lot of orders across like 250,000 plus orders, right? Yeah.
And it was the kind of thing where it's like, okay, there's bunches of these where I can see like some of them are missing billing information, right? So I'll just copy the shipping information, which is present, into the billing information. That'll get the record into Shopify. Stuff like that. It just takes a while to do that. And the tools I'm using were very slow. Like Numbers on the Mac, not great. not great, but
Yeah.
I don't have Excel.
You should just have something. Well, I would say because I use Google Sheets for everything because I won't even touch numbers. Every time numbers opens up on my Mac,
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this? Is horrible. Like everything about, but I'm not dealing with like something that intense.
I tried Google Sheets. It barfed. It didn't like.
Yeah, I'll bet it did. Yeah, you'd probably have to split it up.
So next time, I'm pretty comfortable with SQL. I've been doing that for years, and so I think next time I'm just gonna dump it all into a database and do it all through that because it's so much faster than messing with.
Yeah, I'll bet.
But anyway, yeah, so that's what I'm working on. One other interesting thing that popped up this week you might be curious about, and I've seen this happen before. This is like the second time it's come up. Someone in one of the groups I'm a part of shared an app that's in the Shopify App Store. It's like, hey, is this too good to be true? And the app's one of those like optimizing apps where it's supposed to increase your page speed scores and things like that. And it increased it to perfection, which is like, there might be something going on here. So they dug into the obfuscated and minified JavaScript source, and what they found was that it was essentially removing all the external links to anything on a page load, and then reintroducing them after, it's Google page speed and all that would have run. So it's a complete sham, but
yeah, anytime and man, we could do a whole episode on this because I have this big giant soapbox when it comes to page speed optimization. But from the super high level perspective, anytime someone's focusing on just that page speed score itself, trash, because that's not even Google doesn't care about that, and so neither should you. But it's the easy thing to see, and Shopify has it right there in the dashboard. And so a lot of people came up with solutions that were like, let's just fix the number in the dashboard. And so you get stuff like that. The tough thing of that is that doesn't help your users at all, right? Because we're just trying to trick the Google bot, right? That's all that it is. And so that's I think they call that like a black hat SEO technique. So definitely not a fan. There's a couple too. They'll write some stuff out in there to basically just like, hey, if it is the Google bot hitting the site, like don't load JavaScript, don't load images, don't load anything. And so like, we got 100 on mobile, and you're like, did you though? Like, no.
Yeah.
So yes, we can do that as a separate episode at some point because I could go on and on about that stuff kind of type thing. I'm sure you've got some fantastic insights too for some of that. But
obviously,
yeah.
Speaking of numbers, what's the number 4 behind your big head there?
That's the episode number, man.
That's cool.
Episode number 4.
That's like the OG Shopify display.
This is the counter, and you can't even get it anymore. So I usually have it displaying like YouTube stats, which I'm so disappointed in myself. I haven't created a YouTube video in like 4 months or whatever.
You're busy doing something else.
Yeah. So it's all this other stuff, man. All these other things.
Sorry.
No, it's good. Don't apologize for that. And I'll find time. I'm gonna do more videos, but for now, episode number 4.
I like it.
You need to remind me. Oh yeah.
Is it? Where'd you get that from? Because I saw Kurt had that too.
It's the Shopify Supply website. So just Shopify.supply. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I'm not at like probably like Kurt's level where it's like people like Shopify's just sending me merch all the time or whatever. They did send me. I got that hat. I participated in a something before, and they sent me like a hat and like a water bottle and stuff like that or whatever.
Nice.
So yeah, any Shopify swag, I'm all in on.
Speaking of which, so I know you got one of these too, right? This is the display from Editions last week. I haven't opened it yet. I thought maybe we could do an unboxing or something.
Oh, that would have been let's do it with yours because mine is definitely already out of the bag, and I'm keeping it in the box, but I think we need to do something special with the one because I actually had previously bought one.
Oh wow.
So I have one up and running already. I've had it for months, but I'll save all that for the pick for later. But I think we should do something with the show where maybe somebody gets this display.
Maybe.
I think that'd be really cool.
That'd be cool. If nothing else, we can at least show it off. Speaking of Editions, you had a few more thoughts because there was so much that came out in Editions last week.
So much came out,
and depending on you're listening to this, that was end of July 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And so we covered a few of the highlights, but you got some more stuff for us this week that you just wanted to touch on. So let's take a peek at that.
Yeah, so even though some of it obviously is, I know this is a podcast for Shopify devs. So obviously there's some things that were more like merchant facing, but I think there are things that are going to really impact us, like while we're building things, even though it's merchant specific stuff. So for
Yeah.
instance, I don't know if you did see on there, they've got this whole new plan as well for these flex sections. So they're going to be using essentially Flexbox. I love how they pitched it too, like it was like some fancy thing. And I heard merchants just talking about like, when can we get Flexbox or whatever? It's like, well, I mean, Flexbox is like CSS. It's been around for a long time. We're just like they're using it here in the editor.
Sure. So
but
what's the big deal with it? You can position it other places?
yeah, so it's like it's much more of like like a WYSIWYG kind of type editor, content editor, right? And so like the idea being like when you add a section and it's got different blocks and stuff like that, they can actually click and drag the blocks around like actually
Within
on the
the
page
section.
within the section instead of, like before where, I mean, you can do that more so in the actual settings themselves or whatever. But people were just super stoked that you could go and grab stuff that way.
It's also
So
the theme editor.
correct. Yeah. So it's much more in line with like what you would see with a lot of other kind of page builder kind of type systems that are out there. Excuse me. Sorry. So I think it'll be helpful for merchants, but I am interested in what we're going to have to end up doing in themes to support this as well, because I'm like, what other bits and pieces are we going to have to add in here? I don't know if this is just extra JSON that's getting dumped into the settings, kind of type thing, because they're going to have to keep track of that, the position somehow, right?
That was my first question: is how are they going to serialize that data? So
yeah,
because right now it's all that stuff's in JSON in the section, and so if they start messing with that, if you go in and edit it, that could be a problem, huh?
Yeah, because I mean, it does the same thing. Like if you're looking into theme settings, JSON or whatever, so your settings data, not JSON file in your config and stuff or whatever. The order changes when you change it in the settings, but I'm sure they're going to have to do something where we're going to have to somehow prep sections so that way it's listening for like those changes in positioning or whatever. I just don't know what that looks like yet, and and it's not available yet, right? And there's no actual hard date either on like when that's going to pop in. So I'll be really interested to see what that ends up looking like, or what we might need to do. I'm thinking about like having to update old sections that I've done for people too, as well, because they're going to be like, why does this section not work how it's supposed to now? And like, well, we have to build this extra in or whatever. So I'm curious if there's going to be extra legwork or if they're going to do something magical in there to make that all happen seamlessly.
Yeah, well, we'll have to check it out when it's available. That'd be great.
Yeah. I think it'll be good. Let's see here. The other thing that we talked, or we did not talk about, or whatever, that's another like really helpful thing for folks, is the business to business only type content. So being able to include volume pricing directly in the editor, that was pretty cool too. So they kind of introduced these both at the same time. There was going to be international specific content directly in the customizer, which was pretty handy. I've seen that roll out in preview on a couple of dev stores that I have. So you can actually go in and change content specifically based on the actual locale, right? That was pretty cool. And then the business to business only and then volume pricing was pretty neat as well. Just being able to set that directly in the editor instead of that. So I'm assuming that's also going to have to work hand in hand with markets. But I don't think there was too much discussion about what that really looked like. I'm trying to pull it up.
Other than the screenshot, I haven't seen it much, and maybe that's all you've seen too, but I wonder how this will impact. I know some popular stores have a consumer site and they also have a wholesale site.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they'll be able to utilize this and have just one store, or if they'll still want to have separate ones.
Yeah, and so Shopify's done that already a little bit. I think this is going to go hand in hand. So on Shopify Plus now, and one of their B2B features is you can do these, they call them catalogs. Mm-hmm. And so it's tied specifically to businesses that they have. So business accounts, not just customer accounts, but then also like businesses or whatever. So when they're logged in, you can set it up so that way they can see only specific, like they said, they call them catalogs or whatever, but it has its own unique pricing and everything else. Sure. So I'd like to see how this is played, because I think catalogs is still not super mature, because I had someone just move to Plus not too long ago, and they were still recommended by the Plus rep to go ahead and create a totally separate store, right? And as an extension store or whatever in their Plus account, And I was like, why didn't we just use catalogs for this? And they're like, this is just what they told us to use. So I was like, dang, why would they do that? Because catalogs has been out for a minute. So I don't know if it's just not fully fleshed out yet. Because then once you're managing 2 stores, you have to still worry about like, oh, we've created a new collection for this. Now we're gonna have to go over and create it for over here. So there's some apps that'll kind of sync them back and forth or whatever. But that's just what everybody loves. Is just like, oh yeah, we can do that, but you're gonna need another app for that. And they're like, why? So
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I think this will be helpful for both of those.
Awesome. What else you got on that list of yours?
Oh man. Oh buddy. I don't know if you've played around too much with the Shop app or the Shop channel at all. So I love using the Shop app. So all using like Shop payments, right, and everything. They do have an app, and they have made some updates to where you can like develop these Shop minis. So like little apps in the Shop app specifically. Looks super cool. So they just mentioned on here that they've got some updates or whatever to the SDK that they're running, and then also being able to customize the appearance of the store and shop, which is also new. Everybody before kind of got this same kind of like similar look and feel, or they're pulling from these different areas, but now they actually have like a little customizer type view. Like you can pull in like and set everything with the branding settings as well in your store, but then also like on another shop went ahead and like added the logo, make sure that all comes through the way that it's supposed to look and everything. So that part is nice as well, just because it's another channel. And I think for a lot of folks, instead of having to worry about an app, the Shop app is pretty neat. I like it, at least. It's pretty handy. It doesn't work amazingly in some instances or whatever. I think you probably just have to be kind of like limited, but it definitely is handy to have when it comes to being able to like see a bunch of Shopify shops that I've purchased from all just in one place.
Yeah, I've never even used it. I had no idea what it was. So it's an app on the phone that lets you see all stores that you visited, or like just host multiple stores in a single app.
Yeah, well, so it's a separate sales channel on Shopify's account specifically. So like your online store is a sales channel. They have one just for the Shop app. And so I think it's just called Shop. The app and stuff is called Shop. So I don't know if you're supposed to say, oh yeah, it's just Shop, but like it's also like a regular word. So like, I think it's kind of confusing. I have to say Shop app.
Is it a verb? Is it a noun? Who knows?
Right. Yeah. So that part is handy, at least to have. So I would check it out, because they also are doing stuff now with Shop Cash, like so you get like cash back and stuff like that too. And it's, I think the cash back part is only if you're a Shopify Plus site, you're eligible to use that, but I don't think it's available on other plans or whatever kind of type thing. But it's a nice incentive or promotion that you can use then too. Oh,
that's cool.
Here. Yeah. All right. So where else? Anyway, so that's I think at least the Shop app. So speaking to, it's obviously helpful for merchants, but for developers, that's a whole new avenue as well to develop on, since it is a new sales channel, but it's directly tied to the store. And I know we talked a little bit last week about like there's so much surface area to cover now if you want to be like in Shopify and doing all this stuff, but I think that's a really great place to potentially start like just zoning in on like, oh, I could just be the person that does shop minis or whatever. That's what they call it, little shop minis.
Is it nicheable? It sounds like it might be like a good way to kind of have a service or a productized consulting thing around that. So
yes, for sure. Let me see
it right now.
Get it. Yeah. Bam. I was trying to see. I think we covered most of the stuff with checkout extensions too that I wanted to cover.
Yeah.
At least last time. The biggest part of it though was there are some new APIs for some custom validation around and logic around like delivery, which is really, really handy for folks. I know there's a couple of apps currently that will, validate or make suggestions, for like specific like addresses and stuff like that. Because that's a big problem. I wouldn't have thought that would be such a big problem, but I've actually had multiple folks ask about that or have problems with that.
Oh, you're working with THC merchants as well, huh?
THC versus no. I've just run into that situation or scenario where people are like apparently trying to send someone to a PO box that can't accept a package or something like that or
Right.
whatever. So um, yeah, that's interesting. But the THC thing, I'm sure, is a real big deal when it comes to that. But you could probably handle that in just like shipping profiles and stuff too. We're not going to ship to this area or whatever. But yeah, that's a big part. And I saw that as a thing that would be helpful. I don't know if you've seen much or interacted with Gil Greenberg all that much
I see him on
online.
Twitter all the time, but I don't
Yeah,
interact.
so super smart guy. He's been on past like editions or whatever they were calling them. Back when we had what was it before editions? We were doing like the actual
Unite.
Shopify events, Unite. So when they moved Unite online, like they brought him on because he was doing some cool stuff in checkout, and so they released a lot about checkout extensions. And he's got an app, so he knows so much about this stuff. But it's really interesting to start seeing Shopify actually, it seems like, take some cues because that was something he was starting to build out. I know within some of his apps was some of that validation logic there as well, and addresses blocking specific buyers or like PO boxes and stuff like that. And it seems like now they're really taking that as a signal of like, oh, okay, like we're going to make this API now available because this
Sure.
is something people really need. So I think that's cool when Shopify kind of listens to and sees things that people are saying like, hey, this is a pain point, and then they build it in. But that just seems like that's a real good signal that they're tied into their own ecosystem then, right? Not eating their own ecosystem like we
Yeah, I
talked
was
about
gonna say
last week,
that's
but really tied in.
yeah, that's nice that they that are responsive like that. I think again, the whole reason we're doing what we're doing is because the Shopify developer community is such a great place to be and a great experience. And a big part of that is because they pay so much attention to us. Although I'm sure there's examples where they don't, but I say on the whole, it's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Overall, because yeah, I'm sure there are instances where it's not great, right? And there
Yeah,
have been instances right before like Shop was really fleshed out. There were a handful of like payment apps or like payment gateway kind of type apps or whatever that
yeah,
they kind of just like forced out, like different checkout. So you get that, you understand that to a degree, and that
yeah,
stinks or whatever. But obviously, there's that's like big pay dirt for them. They're a publicly traded company. Sometimes they're going to have to make decisions that way, right? Even if it's
yeah.
not the best. Um, so yeah, but another thing that people have been talking about for a long, long time. I don't know if you saw this and zeroed in on this, but they are working on getting updates to support more than 100 product
Bum,
variants.
bum.
So
That's
that's kind
exciting.
of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. I don't know if you get people complain about that all the time, but I do for sure. So we've done lots of stuff to like work around that.
Yeah.
I think my favorite way to work around that currently is we set up like product lists in a meta field and then just link out to it directly on the product page.
Oh wow.
So that's simple enough for people to set up. And then we have unique URLs as well on those product pages and stuff like that that they can promote independently. So ultimately, like I've seen that as not a bad thing. I also think there's this concern or issue, right? There's this idea around like good UX or user experience where if there are too many options, then people are gonna like I don't know, like there's just too much to
Yeah.
decide. I don't know if you're like that. I personally am very like that.
Oh yeah, definitely have that. Well, I know I have this one client that I work with. They sell plants,
Hmm.
and there might be a better way to do this, but one of the things that's tricky about their business model is that they have plants that are available at certain weeks of the year. And so
Yeah,
it's
seasonality kind
important,
of type thing.
yeah, and it's important not only for the customer in terms of like knowing when that particular plant will arrive, but because of the
Hmm.
way, it's you manufacture a plant, in the greenhouse and all that sort of stuff, they have to have really good tracking around what plants are available and inventory control and that kind of stuff. And so one of the ways for this particular story we've done it is by having them add variants based on the week that plant's going to ship. And so for
Oh,
that
okay,
instance, like luckily there's only 52 weeks in a year, so we haven't quite hit
sure.
that with the 100 variant limit. But I could easily see if there's cases like that where simply having that ability to utilize variants in a fashion like that is very helpful. And so
Mm.
this is going to be great for those sort of folks.
Yeah, that'd be huge for those situations. Yeah, you run into that a lot, and I think apparel is probably one of the biggest offenders because you've got people who just want to dump everything all into one. So you've got
Yeah.
like we've got a t-shirt and we want to put every single color on there, every single size on there. We want to put with or without, this graphic or whatever on there. We want to put, V-neck and regular standard, and so it's just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I get the idea of you drop into one and you can build your own shirt or whatever out kind of type thing. To me, though, I'm the kind of person, and granted, like, it might just be I'm just too simple, Carl, potentially here. But
Sure.
like if I go to a coffee shop or if I go to eat out at a restaurant or whatever, usually I'm just like, I want to get like the same thing every time. It's going to be real simple. I'm going to be like, if I go to a Starbucks or something, I'm going to get like an Americano or something. Anytime I can get like the number 4, I'm just going to get the number 4. My wife, on the other hand, there's this very long and complicated order that I have to remember that I don't remember. I just have to read off the phone, like a hostage situation, right? Like I need, this kind of type thing. And then they'll ask me questions, like, yeah, you're just, it's so funny. Cause like, I don't know. It's just how my brain works. Like I don't want all these options. I just like, I'm just done. So I think good UX usually lends itself to that, trying to make it as simple as possible for the customer. Even when you should have options probably where they can build stuff out themselves for people that do have that. But I think the overwhelming majority of folks see too many options as like debilitating, right? When you try to like actually go to purchase the product. So
there's was it Blink? There's a book. Is it Malcolm? Who wrote that book? Anyway, it's all about the subconscious and decision making and how too many choices are actually really challenging for us. So if you like pop psychology, it's a good read.
That's interesting. I'll have to take a look. We'll have to find that and link it up.
Yeah.
I feel like I do have that book. Malcolm Gladwell, right? Yes.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I think Blink might have been about the subconscious for some of those.
Yes.
I don't know.
It's how we. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Like, if
does anybody else know what we're talking about? That's the real question.
Yeah. Well, that's why we'll link it up afterwards. I was checking my bookshelf to see if I think it's upstairs, but I had started it. And then just stop. But yeah, like unconscious decision making. Yes, you're on spot. But Baymart Institute, more specific to e-commerce, Carl, who's done tons of user experience research. They also, I know that they've done stuff on that too, right? Like too many options is not necessarily a good thing. But so either way, when people are complaining about the 100 variant limit, there are some APIs being built out to support that here, and so we are not terribly far away from that happening as well. Though I do think we're going to see that more still from being supported by apps than native to Shopify personally, but we'll see what happens there.
Awesome.
Cool.
Anything else that really felt like was worth highlighting that hit the spot again this week?
So the only thing I think, and I am trying to find the actual video for this, but another developer posted on LinkedIn a option where we're going to have to build dev stores to import data directly from an existing store. So right now, Shopify built this out a while ago where you can build a dev store, right? And it'll come with pre-populated data.
Sure.
Which is super helpful instead of having to like add stuff in. So like there's actually some orders in there. There's some products. Like you don't have to mess with all that stuff. However, I run into this scenario where we've built out stuff in meta fields and all this other stuff. We want to test something out, but we don't want to do it on the live store, right? So I'm going to create a dev store, to like make this happen. The problem is when you go to import and you've heavily leveraged meta fields, you go to import all that, a theme even into a new dev store or whatever to test all this stuff out, it'll actually break because you actually have to have like these meta fields already existing if it's like referencing meta fields that aren't there. And so that's obviously a problem. So the nice thing is about this new update, and again, I'm trying to find this. He posted a video, but I can't find it. I need to like reach out and just ask for like, where did this even come from? So there is an option where it talks about it in there, where there's these dev onboarding improvements. I just didn't see the video on there as well. But basically, you'd be able to source all that data from an existing store when you build a dev store. And that way you would totally circumvent this process because it will bring over the meta fields. And that part's huge, particularly when you've heavily leveraged meta fields, meta objects, and all this other stuff or whatever. If it's already in there, that's going to be huge.
Sure. But remind me when we get to our picks, I have something to say about that. So,
oh man,
I know, right?
Yeah.
All right, well,
Nice.
let's go on to our next section. Those of you listening at home, I didn't realize we actually do have sections. That we just got through our main
we're
topic
we're
section.
organized now.
That's right.
We're organized now.
But now we're
We've got
moving into a
sections.
section we call the Changelog, I guess. Yeah. And so this is where we take a peek at the Shopify developer changelog activity over the last week or two, see if anything sticks out to us. And Taylor, you were looking at it, and a couple things really stuck out to you this week. So let's check out about those. What's this first one? Something about AI?
Yeah.
I know it's gonna be good.
Yeah, it's going to be good if it's got AI involved, right?
Yeah.
So Shopify is using AI now to give a summary based on customer reviews for your Shopify app. So in the App Store, when people visit, it'll have this little snippet here that kind of says like, this is what customers say about your app.
Huh.
And no, it's really neat the way that they're doing it. And it seems to be a couple of devs have posted, what theirs says kind of type thing. And it seems to be pretty good. It's a little bit on the repetitive side sometimes, which kind of makes sense. Like a lot of reviews, a lot of times you'll read the same thing over and over again. But the minimum criteria for it, they do have minimum criteria because obviously, if there's an app with 2-star reviews or whatever, and you've only got like 10, and you don't want it saying like people say that this app sucks, like so there is a minimum criteria for it has to be 4.0 stars and up, and then also has to at least have 100 reviews on it before it'll even give the option for the summary to be shown directly in the App Store. So I think it'll be helpful for merchants and app developers.
So what it shares then, it literally just summarizes all the other reviews into a single summarized review. So it's not like bullet points, it's like actual like descriptive paragraph or something.
Yeah, it's just like a little paragraph. And it'll say, this is what people say about this app. So also, pretty neat. I'm trying to pull up and see if I can find an example here for folks to look at.
Just for you to note too, Taylor, I do think they make noisier keyboards if you would like one. So good gracious, what do you got over there?
Was it that bad? It's a Keychron K4. I love this thing, but I do forget how noisy it is. So that's a good call out there, Karl. But no, okay. So if you pull up the App Store, I'm gonna drop this in our chat here.
Sorry, so I couldn't hear you over the sound of it.
If you go to the App Store and look up, I just pulled up. This is one of the first apps that was on there. Judge.me product reviews. It was just like on the first page or whatever. They've been around for forever, obviously. So they have tons of reviews, good reviews and stuff. But you can see there at the very top of the review section it says what merchants think.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives you this little like generated summary or whatever. So I think that's pretty handy for that to be in there. So I do think they probably should do a better job calling out though, like how this is being done. Obviously it's linked out. It's got a little like little graphic next to it. Yeah. You can click on it, little tooltip that says this is generated by Shopify Magic. But I do think, because like to me, if I was just a regular Joe, scrolling the App Store here, I would just assume this is like created by the app themselves, kind of like a highlighted feature. So I think if they should probably call this out a little bit more, but I do think it's nice that it's right there and helpful to some degree.
I'd also be curious, as an app developer, obviously one of the interesting things about AI is that they can hallucinate, right? What if there's something that was generated that is just patently false? Do you have any recourse with Shopify to get that addressed?
Ooh, that's a good question, because I do see that like potentially happening, right?
I would assume they thought about that, like, and they've had an answer to it, but yeah, I'd be curious. So
I think maybe that they can choose to turn an offer on potentially. I don't know. I'd have to ask about that. I don't remember if that's something that they can actually.
Well, if it becomes a problem, you just do what we all do, which is go on Twitter and complain and hope to get someone's attention.
Hey, that actually happened this week. I don't know. We didn't talk about that, but there was. I don't know did you see the trademark hubbub?
I did see a little bit
about this week. Yeah. I don't know where that fits into our sections here.
Not the changelog.
It's not in the changelog, so we're gonna skip right over it.
What
about you? I was gonna say, did you see anything in the changelog, or you want me to keep? I'll jabber away at the changelog, man.
Well, I saw you had a second thing. So what's the next one?
I did. So the other cool call out was the one-page checkout in the checkout editor. So now for those of you that have not played around with this, you can actually preview Everything from one-page checkout on your shop to what checkout extensions are going to look like and customizations there. So I think that's really handy that they have added this. It's in your settings under checkout now. You can actually create like draft checkouts views. So pretty neat, really handy. Still being built out though, obviously, just like all this new stuff or whatever. But I think it is pretty nice little touch.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing that too, because I'm not played around with one-page checkouts too much, so this will be nice to see.
Well, they're still rolling it out so gradually. I figured like it would be real heavy, but I think they're just taking their time, right? Like I'm sure that's a pretty big rollout. And if they need to be cautious anywhere, it's with checkout. You don't want to mess with that super heavy, right?
Which, let's just say, like, I know it's the changelog, but if you're a developer and you're developing something and you think there's any potential of large amounts of customers or volume, like, dude, do yourself a favor, implement feature flags or some similar system from the get-go so that you have the option to even do something like that, right? It's just so nice to be able to test a new release on a subset of customers, be able to enable that feature selectively, and then get that feedback before you roll out to the whole thing. But again, not a changelog thing, sorry Taylor, but it's something it's often overlooked, but it's
stick to the script, Karl. Yeah, like that's good development, right? In general, like that's so
yeah,
it's nice to see Shopify implementing some of that stuff too, so
for sure. All right, so our next section, the final section, is our pick of the week. I'm gonna go first since I've let you go first every time so far.
Good.
Yeah, my pick of the week is an app called Matrixify, which is what I'm using for that import, which I probably mentioned before. The reason I'm picking it is twofold. One, it's really helpful. I don't know, I haven't looked recently at other options out there, but this one's pretty solid. I like the fact that the build system, the way it queues it up and presents it to you graphically and shows you the progress. It's slow, but I think, again, that's probably more a Shopify API reality than anything Matrixify is doing wrong. The other thing I like about it is that I just checked when we were talking about metafields, and it actually does support import and export of metafields. So if you need another way of getting
Matrixify does?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I haven't actually used them for that, but that's huge.
I know, right? It's probably fairly recent, but they do support that, and there's documentation on their site about it, which I will paste in the Slack, or not the Slack, but the chat, so that Taylor can include it in the show notes, because he's so cool like that. And the other thing I found useful about it too is if you're screwing around with a store, say importing 250,000 orders, as one does, and let's say you make a mistake, and you have a lot of orders you need to get rid of all of a sudden, you can actually use Matrixify to do that as well, because part of the way it works is in the spreadsheet that you pass off to it, there's a command column where you instruct it, like, do you want to create a new record, do you want to merge into an existing record, do you want to replace an existing record, or do you want to delete it? So all you have to do is create a spreadsheet with order numbers and the command to delete and pass it off, and it will bulk delete a whole bunch of orders right away, which is way more convenient than trying to do it by hand, if you even can, because some cases you can't do the interface.
Right. That's awesome. No, I didn't realize. So I've used Matrixify for like WooCommerce migrations. I think is the biggest thing that I've used it for in the past, and it worked phenomenally for that. But I did not realize about metafields and stuff like that. That's huge, because that is a pain to get moved over when you have to. So that's awesome.
If you do use it, it's worth reading through their docs. They've got a lot of general common case stuff set up, but their spreadsheet that they accept for import is a lot of fields, and they talk about each one, and so it's helpful. And the other thing I would throw out, if you do use Matrixify and get an error, almost every case that error is being passed up directly from like the Shopify API. So if it doesn't make sense or it's confusing, think of it not in the context of Matrixify as much as maybe if you were just sending an API request yourself to Shopify, that would be triggering this, why it might be happening. So
nice. And Matrixify, they are relatively present in the Shopify Slack, and they also have their own Slack as well. Nice. I don't know if you caught that or whatever, but folks in there are relatively helpful in there as well if you run into issues. So that's one of the things I look for when I'm trying to work with a client. I'm looking for, like, they've got some good support, good community, good documentation, or something in some fashion. And so just the fact that they are relatively present in the community, and then they've created other places for that as well to get some support when you need it or whatever, is really, really nice.
Oh,
I
you
need
gotta
people to
pick.
bail me out when I run into problems, Carl.
That's
I
what I'm here
can't
for,
call you for
Taylor.
everything.
Oh, you can. You can. I told you before. You got my number. My kids understand.
uh, right. So okay, so my turn here. I'm actually going to. My pick of the week is the display. So, do you want to like? Are you going to do the unboxing now? Do you want to do that at some other time? Are you going to like rip it open?
I can. I mean, I don't. I'm not gonna like. You have yours. You want to show it? I don't want to take your thunder. So
Yeah.
you
Well,
just
no.
go. No,
Well, I'll just show you. So this is the box that it comes in.
I'm gonna keep
Right.
mine
It's
sealed.
not. You can see it. It's not super.
Oh yeah, check it
This is
out.
in the box. It's really nice. Packaging and all this other stuff. It's a wonderful unboxing experience. It's very important to me. I don't know about to you, but it's nice when it's that way. Um, I wish. I don't think my. I'm trying to see if my display, the cord is long enough. Oh, it
Oh,
is.
oh wow.
Bam. This is the
Check
one
it
that
out.
I bought, and I've got
Okay.
my cord is just barely long enough to reach here. So this thing is super cool.
It's like a
Okay, so
light
this is a
bright.
Shopify display. Yeah, and it comes. You can like set it up. It has an app that you can choose a bunch of different apps that have already been developed for it, right? And it'll just cycle through them. You can set up the to different timing, the brightness on it. This thing is super bright. It's only at like 40% right now, and it's this bright. Like when you turn it up all the way, it's killer. So this is the little Shopee app that they have.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
but so it's by a company called Titbit. I'm probably saying that Titbite. I don't know how you properly say this or whatever. But you can just have it set up. Obviously, they sell or position it as like it's for merchants. Like all my numbers, like because we're doing this at the beginning of the month. Like all, so what it's doing right now, it cycles through. Since I am training for the sprint try, I actually have it showcase my different events that I'm training for. So that way I can kind of see the month's previous progress, and then based on current workouts I'm doing, it syncs with Strava. It's just a
Oh
workout
wow.
app, right? But it'll track, swimming, biking, and running, which are the three events in the sprint try. So it's good, like motivation, keeps things top of mind. But they do have this option where you can develop apps for it specifically. I think some partners have already done that. So you could hook it up to something if you're like an app dev or a theme dev. Like you could probably figure out a way to hook into like revenue numbers and stuff like that. And you can push, instead of making it publicly available, you can push directly to just your display in case you don't want to like, worry about making sure everything is public facing or whatever kind of type thing. You can just push directly to your own as well. So it's super neat as well. It looks really cool. It's very easy to set up. That's the huge advantage. I don't know anybody that has purchased one of these counters. It's a pretty big pain to set up initially or whatever. Just wasn't super smooth. I fought with it for a while to get everything up and running the way I wanted to. But the display is just butter. Easy. So love it.
But what if you don't eat animal products? Is it?
If you don't what now?
No, I'm just kidding.
If you don't eat animal products, what is, I was gonna say ghee, but that's just a different kind of butter, isn't it? That's not helpful. I don't know either. Like what do people
Almond
use
butter.
if
I
they
don't know.
don't eat animal products? Like I
know.
don't know. You probably don't need butter if you're not eating animal products, though. I'm
Vegetable
just
oil.
trying out vegetables. Like
Yeah, Crisco. It's like
yeah,
Crisco.
I think that's animal fat or
Ah,
something, though, isn't
I
it?
don't know. I think
It's
it's
like
on
a
the wrong track.
byproduct of something. I don't know.
Anyway, look, this is not Shopify related per se, but I think when you think back to how computing has changed in the last 15 years or whatever, like the iPhone, obviously it's revolutionary in so many ways, right? Everybody remembers when it first came out and
Yeah.
the impact it had. I remember talking to a friend about it who I was like, the apps, what are the apps? Because they had, the SDK wasn't even out when it first came out. And like, it was basically
Right.
just getting on the web on your phone, and it was nice.
Mhm.
It'd all be web-based apps, right? Which, being a web developer, I was like, well, who cares about these SDKs and stuff? That's where it's at. He's like, no, you wait and see. The apps are where it's at. And the apps are where it's at. And I think we forget how it not only has changed everything that we think about when we think about the phone, but how it's enabled things like this display, right? Where now you
Mhm.
can create so much cool hardware and know that the interface is already taken care of because everybody's got one of these things. And
Right.
it just makes it so much more accessible. How would you have done that before? Make a programmatic Shopify display page. You'd have to like get a serial cable to plug it into your PC and download a Windows app, that kind of stuff. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. That's really cool to think about. And I think the only thing I don't love about so Apple obviously did a lot of cool things there, and I think they're building in maybe some more support for this in the future. But this idea behind like progressive web apps, I don't know if you ever jumped into that too much. But I wish there were a lot more allowances for that instead of how they're really good about gatekeeping everything behind, Apple, right? In the name of security and privacy and all this other stuff or whatever. Because I do love the idea of progressive web apps and all that stuff or whatever. But anymore, I don't know. I'm apped out. I love that we can develop some of these things, but I also don't want to have to develop. Everything that I can do on the web, I'm doing on the web, like in a browser, So, but yes, Apple for sure, revolutionary, and paved the way for a lot of that stuff.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because this is the pick section. I'm so sorry.
You can't give me a tangent to go on. Sections. Well, this is sections everywhere, folks. That's gonna be. We need to rebrand the podcast to sections everywhere. Remember when everyone talked about that all the time?
Yes.
Before Online Store 2.0, it's like sections everywhere, and then that came out, and that's all people wanted to talk about. So, sections everywhere, folks. We have sections, but they are indeed everywhere. So.
Oh man. Well, I think this is probably a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
People have bared with us long enough. But this is good. It's good to catch up with you, Taylor, as always. And before you go, that race you're running, when is that coming up? Tell us about that.
Oh man, that's not this Sunday, but next Sunday. So it's August 13th. So okay. I'll be down in Columbus. Well, I'll be down in Columbus here. I'll be down in your neck of the woods this weekend as well. But it's my anniversary weekend, so priorities. I won't be able to swing by and see you. So this is. I'm gonna tell my wife sorry. I've got to meet up with Karl. You can go shopping or something. So the Sunday after that or whatever, it's at Deer Creek State Park.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's like an hour south.
So we're So it's down there. So I'm pretty excited about it. Pretty nervous about it. But I'm glad my brother and two of my brother-in-laws are going to be doing it with me. So it should be a lot of fun. My only goal is to finish, and that's it. So not get too beat by my older brother. I can't let him win. But he is like 50 pounds lighter than me, so he's probably going to smoke me pretty good.
Oh. This is a triathlon, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I told him my only hope of... What's that?
Have you ever raced in anything like an actual competition before?
Not a 5K, nothing. Like I played
with this, huh?
Yeah, just just go all in. I didn't want to do I couldn't just do like a run, like a half marathon or something like that. Like running's terrible to me. Has always been terrible to me. I'm a larger guy. It was always you ran because you were getting punished for something, right? I played football in high school and 1 year in college. But running has never been my forte, being a larger individual. But that's why I like the triathlon, at least, because it breaks it up. It's not all running, right? You can do some swim, you can do some bike, and you can do some run. So I hopefully don't hate it after I do my first one or whatever. But I'm excited. It'll be a good thing.
The thing that always gets me about this kind of stuff is that you have to pay to do this. It's like, oh my goodness, it's hard enough already.
Yeah, right. Well, I like that they always throw in like a T-shirt or something to make you feel better about it. Because it's like, here's, you got to pay $100, but you're gonna get a T-shirt out of it. And you're like, oh, okay, so this is $100 T-shirt for me to go and sweat for a couple hours.
Like probably Gildan, 95% polyester T-shirt or whatever. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, it's like it costs them like $4, or whatever. So. Oh, it'll be worth it. Yeah, I'm gonna wear that shirt everywhere. I'm a triathlete, so I did the shortest one you could do to call yourself a triathlete, but it's still a triathlete. So.
No, I mean it's legitimate. It's a lot of work you put into this. So I'm excited to hear your post-race report, and sure you'll do great.
Yeah, I'm excited, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening and sticking with us. And Taylor, we'll see you in the next one.
All right, sounds good. Bye.